To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang. Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're good, hope you're well. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Not long back from Emirates Stadium. It was a scorcher in North London today. Had a great day. Took the wife and my son along with me. For my little one, it's his second or third experience of Emirates Stadium. And I feel like the Emirates Cup gives you a great opportunity, doesn't it, to take the youngsters down there, because there isn't that kind of edge that you get in a Premier League game, which makes it a far more family-friendly environment. Not that Arsenal is ever, at a point where you worry about things like that. But, there's also the part of it's a friendly, so I'm not as emotionally invested, which means I can actually pay attention to the questions that my son's asking me rather than telling him to shush every 2 minutes because we're on the attack or we're defending a really dangerous situation. So, yeah, it's a totally different experience. And I think it's a great opportunity, as I say, to take the little ones down there. So if you get the chance in the coming years, if you look at the Emirates Cup and think, I'm not so sure about that, for a family day out, it is brilliant. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, as did the little one. He got a little bit carried away when William Saliba scored, to the point that he took his shirt off and started swinging it around in the air. And my first thought was, be careful, son. There's a poor lady standing behind you. Don't want you to catch her in the eye with your bloody green Arsenal shirt that you're swinging around up in the air. Thank you to everyone for joining me on this Sunday evening. I know Sunday night's not a great time. I know people are normally busy on a Sunday. So I appreciate that plenty of you are with us live right now across the different platforms. If you're watching us on YouTube, guys, please do leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on audio, then please do subscribe as well and leave us a review on whichever your preferred platform is. All of that stuff really does help. What else was I going to say? Patreons. There is a link in the description if you'd like to be a patron of the Chronicles of a Gooner. You got 2 bits of content coming your way this week. I said that I was going to leave the Patreon stuff open over the course of the summer because there's not been as much Patreon stuff going out as I would have liked. In fact, I don't think there's been, I think there was there one? Might not have even been one. I might have made one with the idea of it being a Patreon piece of content and then decided to release it normally anyway. I think that's what happened. But you're going to get 2 pieces. There's 2 season previews coming out. Now, we're going to do a main season preview podcast where we're going to look at the Arsenal team in general. We're going to talk about where we think we're going to finish, how we're going to get along, what we're expecting to see, etc., etc. But there's 2 players that I think this is a really huge season for in Arsenal colours. A really big season. I'm not going to tell you who they are just yet, but over the course of this week, you're going to get bite-sized podcasts focusing on those individual players and previewing their seasons rather than just focusing on the club and the team overall. Because I think for these 2 players, who we will reveal over the course of the next week, it's a really big campaign and they really do need to impress. So we'll get into that, of course, a little bit later on in the week. Right, what are we doing today? We are talking Arsenal's 2-0 victory over Olympique Lyonnais, Emirates Cup champions. Yes, that's right. That's what we are. I mean, I shouldn't do this, right? Because we're here to talk about Arsenal. But I did find it quite funny yesterday that Harry Kane didn't want to wear the armband and then therefore lift the trophy at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Visit Malta trophy, whatever it was. I know it wasn't anything serious, but he sort of, it's as if he knew that was going to tip them over the edge. So he just didn't want to do it. And also, I was laughing because a cousin of mine who is a Tottenham supporter was taking her son to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium yesterday, and she said, or she put something on social media, the first game for the boy, and there was all these comments like below saying like, oh, this is where it starts, this is how it begins, a taste of it. And then I saw the result and I thought, yeah, absolutely, a taste of it, indeed, for that poor young Spurs fan. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's crack on and focus on today's game. Arsenal 2-0 winners over Olympique Lyonnais and Emirates Cup champions. But how did the game go? What did we learn from it? What can we take away from it? And what does it tell us about the start of the new season? Well, Arsenal broke the deadlock through William Saliba, a corner kick coming in from Arsenal's left-hand side, delivered by Declan Rice and headed in by the Frenchman. Arsenal's second goal was very, very similar. Another set piece, another powerful header. This time, though, from Gabriel, his central defensive partner. So what did we learn from that? Well, we learned that Arsenal are just as much of a threat when it comes to set pieces as they were last season. Now, I find this really, really interesting, right? Because I think at the start of last season, and I know there's been improvement in Arsenal's set piece deliveries for a while now, and the way that Arsenal utilize those situations. But last season, I think so many people were taken by surprise at just how good we are when it comes to those situations, not just defensively, but offensively as well. I can remember years and years and years of rival teams looking at us and going, they're soft-centered, they've got a soft underbelly, we can get at them from set pieces. All we need to do is win free kicks in and around the box, win corners, force throw-ins from which we can launch it into the penalty area. And if we do that and we battle hard, Arsenal don't really fancy it and will probably get some joy. And this Arsenal team is just totally different to that, isn't it? Like, we talk a lot about the size of this team and the fact that when Mikel Arteta seems to go into the transfer market, he is looking for physicality just as much as he's looking for technical ability and intelligence and all the other things that, of course, he likes in a footballer. And last season, as I say, we were not only very, very good from those situations defensively, but offensively, we were really good. It was a real weapon of ours. And it's nice to see that, okay, it's a preseason friendly, and okay, Lyon didn't really look particularly up for it today, and certainly weren't putting their bodies on the line to try and desperately earn a result. I get all of that. But to see that we've still got that in our locker, that is something that we're going to carry into the new season. We want to get better, right, in all departments, but to be able to carry that forward is a big, big deal. And what I noticed as well, because after the first one went in, I thought, oh, we're quite dangerous from set pieces again. And so what I did after that was pay real particular attention to the set piece routines. And I talked a lot about these set piece routines on shows throughout last season. I remember doing a couple of analysis pieces on, in particular, Kai Havertz's role from those set pieces, the way that he starts really wide of the far post and then drives inside, and talked about on multiple occasions him making goals essentially by being really clever in his movement, using his body, using his frame. Now, we know that Nicolas Jova is the man that comes up with these routines and set pieces, etc., etc. But obviously the players have to then go out there and carry those instructions out and execute the routine to perfection. And Arsenal, did that again today. But the set piece routines, they don't look massively different, at least not based on what I could see today. But there do seem to be some adjustments, some tweaks. We're starting to put the ball into different areas, varying it up a little bit. And so I'm confident that that is something we can take with us into the new season. A continuous threat from set piece situations, using the size, the physical presence, and the dominance that we can exert, given that we've got a Land of the Giants team nowadays. Is going to be really, really important for us going into the new campaign. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we do from set pieces in the new Premier League campaign. I want to talk a little bit about Thomas Partey, because on a recent episode, I talked quite a bit about how, look, for me, on the ball, in the six, he's still Arsenal's best, okay, in terms of ability, in terms of level. I had someone tweet me today saying, are you still selling that we should, are you still insisting that we should sell Thomas Partey? I don't ever remember insisting that we should be selling Thomas Partey. I did talk about him after one of the preseason friendlies and say, look, physically he just doesn't look like he's there. And that worries me and that concerns me. And if we're going to go into a new season with him playing a vital role, then his fitness levels between that point and the start of the campaign really, really do need to improve. Now, I still don't think they're there based on what I saw today. I still think there's a lot of work to be done. I don't think today's game was particularly intense. I don't think he was challenged. I thought there were times where he got the ball and he had so much space that he could put his foot on it and literally stop. And we saw a lot of players doing that today, particularly during that first half period. I thought Lyon pressed us a bit harder in the second half and were a little bit more aggressive in the second period. Some of the changes that they made sort of injected a little bit of energy into their team. I'm not saying Partey's there now, and that I'm not worried about that at all anymore. Like that my mind's completely changed. But he has looked sharper, or did look sharper this afternoon than he did in some of the previous preseason friendlies. So, yeah, that's an encouraging sign at the very, very least. Guys, if you've got questions, because I can see a few of you are popping questions in the chat, do me a favor, hold fire on them. I'm just going to run through the things that I want to touch on, and then I will come back to the live chat and I'll spend a few minutes tackling those. So please hold on to them just so that they don't get lost in the live chat. Ilke Helling has been a member of the channel for 40 months. Wow. He says, greetings from Helsinki, Finland. Can't wait until next Saturday. Thank you so much, mate. Really, really appreciate that. And big love going out to all our listeners in Helsinki. Helsinki is one of the places, actually, that when I look at the podcast stats, there's quite a few listeners from. So thank you. Really, really do appreciate that. Right, let's move on to the next topic of discussion. Gabriel Martinelli. Did he do enough today to guarantee his place in the starting 11 for Wolves next Saturday? I've been sitting there throughout the summer, actually, trying to figure out whether I think that in Mikel Arteta's mind, Trossard is the one that he's going to start the campaign with, or if I think it's going to be Gabriel Martinelli. We've all talked about Martinelli's season last season, the fact that it wasn't as good as the one before. There was a bit of a drop-off. There were factors, I think, outside of his control that may have contributed to that. But generally, he wasn't at the level that we've come to expect from him. And obviously, Leandro Trossard's ability to finish brilliantly, to produce those clutch moments, to win you games, to decide football matches. I think when it came to the end of the campaign and we were really in desperate need of points and nothing else mattered, you can understand why he was picked ahead of Gabriel Martinelli at times. I've watched Martinelli through preseason. Obviously, he went off to the Copa America, came back. Him and Big Gabby went. Gabriel Jesus, of course, stayed behind. He didn't go. But I remember sort of thinking a few weeks ago, like, I'm not sure which one Mikel Arteta is going to start the season with. And when you saw the lineup today, right? So you saw Havertz starting up front. You saw Martinelli starting from the left. You saw Zinchenko playing at left back, a player that I think is probably going to have to start the season at left back. Whether or not that was Mikel Arteta's plan, I don't know. Just because, Tomiyasu's not around. Timber is going to return to training this week, we think. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. But, his fitness isn't quite there. Riccardo Calafiori's a few weeks behind everybody else in terms of building himself back up. So you get the impression that Zinchenko is going to start at left back. And I looked at Martinelli today in the starting 11 and I thought, that might be a sign. That might be a sign that Mikel Arteta is ready to bring you back into the starting 11 and give you that left side to make your own going into the new campaign. And then I watched his performance and I watched it really, really closely. And I found it quite frustrating. I found him to be almost forcing the issue at times. And I've said this about Martinelli before, in that there are times where he gets his head down and he's only got one thing on his mind. And in some ways, that's great because the aggression that he shows, the directness that he shows as a result of that, the drive that he displays at times makes him really, really difficult to defend against because he's relentless. Every time he gets the ball, he's going to go at you. He's going to go at you, take you on the outside, take you on the inside, in, out, get to the byline, cut it back. Sometimes he's going to cut inside. He's just so relentless in his nature, in his work, that sometimes I could imagine as a defender, you're just thinking when he gets the ball, not again. But there isn't a great deal of end product coming out of Gabriel Martinelli at the moment. And that worries me. That concerns me. Not to the point where I want him out of the club, or to the point where I'm saying we should sell him, or to the point where I'm writing him off for the 24-25 season. We're not there. Like, not everything has to be that black and white, right? I love Martinelli. I love what he brings. I love what he gives us. But the end product is missing, and it was missing for most of last season. And in pre-season, I'm having the same concerns and worries. The only kind of flash we saw in pre-season was it Manchester United, where he come on, roasted the fullback a couple of times, come inside and scored a goal. It wasn't a great finish. It was, a bit of a weak effort at goal. It just wasn't as good as people made it out to be, I guess, is my opinion on that. But I looked at him today and I thought, you haven't done enough for me to go, yep, Martinelli starts against Wolves. Now, he might. And if he did, I wouldn't be surprised. But I didn't come away from today's game thinking, yep, Martinelli, you've done it. You've made that position your own again. And I guess over the course of the season, all of these players are going to get enough minutes. Okay. We know that we're going to be trying to compete on multiple fronts. The Champions League has been extended in terms of the format. Therefore, there'll be more games. We know that all of these players are going to play a part. And whoever doesn't start out of Trossard or Martinelli against Wolves at the weekend is probably still going to play some part anyway, because that's the way that Mikel Arteta likes to manage those two players. So, yeah, not writing him off, but definitely didn't see enough today to convince me that he deserves starting ahead of Leandro Trossard against Wolves when we face them next Saturday. Let me know your thoughts in the chat on that one as well. Bukayo Saka started today, as did Declan Rice. And I got to say, they both looked a little bit rusty. Bukayo Saka didn't seem to have that edge when it comes to kind of taking people on, that bit of sharpness that we've become so accustomed to seeing. He still showed plenty of strength and had a few decent moments as well, but it certainly wasn't peak Bukayo Saka. But as I say, when you think about how little of a break those guys have had because of the European Championships, because of England going all to it, the way to the final, and because of their want and desire to be back fit, ready and available for the new season, I think it's unfair to expect them to be in great shape right now. And I think we got to be patient with them and give them time. They're such good players that even when their level drops a bit, they're still two of our best players, and that says a lot about their value and importance to the team. But I did think both Saka and Rice were just a little bit rusty. I've talked about Saka maybe just not having that edge, that extra half a yard that normally gets him away from people quicker. And with Declan Rice, he just didn't look as imposing as he normally does, not physically and not in possession either. But obviously those two, they are intertwined in a lot of ways. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point. Like I wouldn't expect them to be at their brilliant best when we play Wolves next weekend, but they're such good players that they need to be in the team. They will be in the team. And I think we're going to see them come good in the coming weeks. But to say that they're there already would just be a lie. And I don't want to do that. Okay. We got to talk about the new man. He's here and he's beautiful. Riccardo Calafiori. He's here and he's beautiful. Riccardo Calafiori made his Arsenal debut today in front of the adoring Emirates Stadium crowd. What a man. He looks the part. He came on and I thought really gave his all to try and show that he's here not just to be a part of the squad, not to be a rotational option, but to be a member of our best 11. He wants to make that left-back position his own. He has seen an opportunity. I'm sure there was a lot of talk between him and Mikel Arteta about what his role would entail. I'm sure at times he'll be utilised in the centre-back role that he's made his name in, of course. But I think he'll look at the example of Ben White. I think he'll look at that and think, Ben White, probably not as good a centre-half as Gabriel or William Saliba, but if he uses his skills and sort of tweaks his game accordingly, he can become one hell of a fullback, particularly in a side that's set up the way we are. And I think Calafiori would have been well aware of the problems that we had last season at left back. It was a problem area for us. It was go with Zinchenko and have lots on the ball and have him drift into all sorts of different areas and be really effective in possession, but then ask him to defend against the league's best wingers, and he very, very quickly came unstuck. Then you had Jakub Kiwior, another centre-back by trade, but one that doesn't look as adaptable, in my opinion, as maybe Calafiori does, or even Timber does, or Ben White does. Asking Kiwior to go into midfield and make bold, brave runs and bold, brave passes when on the ball in central areas, it just was never going to work. Tomiyasu came in and I thought defensively was the best of the lot, but he couldn't give you what we needed on the ball. And in Calafiori, I think Mikel Arteta sees the solution to that problem. He sees someone, in my view, who can come into the side, make that left-back position his own, can be aggressive, can be front-footed in the way that he defends, but also can be creative and can go drifting when he needs to, go galloping into space when he wants to, when he feels like it, when he thinks that's the best thing for the team. And I thought Calafiori made a real effort to try and show us in a very short period of time, what was it, less than half an hour, what he was all about today. Aggressive in the way that he went to try and win the ball, never shirked the challenge, always willing to get stuck in, always trying to win the duel that was presented to him. And on the ball, he looked pretty confident. You know, his hair flopping about and getting that left foot on it and playing passes. And there was a couple of little dummies and nice touches and moves and things like that. Yeah, I was really encouraged by what I saw of him today. But look, the opposition wasn't great. He's going to get a far harder examination when he comes up against Premier League opposition. There's no doubt about that. But as far as debuts go, and given the circumstances where it was a game that was a bit lackluster at that point, a game that the outcome had already been decided essentially, I think, you know, he tried to raise the intensity level himself, and it certainly wasn't a cruise of a game for him. He certainly went out there with the intentions of really kind of imposing himself and showing off his skill set. So I was encouraged by that, but obviously I'm not going to make a massive song and dance about Riccardo Calafiori looking good against a sort of much changed Lyon side by that point in a game that was dead, in a game that we'd essentially already won. But obviously it's a nice thing to come on for the first time in your new home, in your new stadium, receive that sort of warmth from the fans, which he certainly got. There's no doubt about that. And now he can hopefully get his Arsenal career kick-started and start moving forward. There are a couple of other bits and pieces that I want to touch on. By the way, start getting your questions in now, and I'll pick up as many of those as I can in the next few minutes. But just a couple of quick updates. So Mikel Arteta has been speaking after the game, of course, in his press conference. I wasn't in the press conference today because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, I took the little boy and my missus to the game today. So I was literally just there in a fan capacity. But Jurrien Timber is expected to return to training with the team this coming week. So I think that's hopefully going to be Monday. I don't think Monday was specified from the quotes that I read, but from this week means that at some point he's going to rejoin. We know that he had a sort of foot problem that they were a little bit concerned about given how long he'd been out for, and nobody wanted to take any risks or gambles with Jurrien Timber's fitness, given that he's been out for a long, long time, not that long ago. On Tomiyasu, we were told a few more weeks. We're going to have to be patient with him. It's another injury for him. It just feels like an ongoing theme with him, doesn't it? It's a real worry, that one. And Fabio Vieira, you might have noticed, was left out of the squad today, not because he is on his way out, but because he has picked up a small hip issue. Not really any details on that. Arsenal, once they released the team, then put a follow-up post on X saying Fabio Vieira has a slight hip issue and Jurrien Timber has a slight foot issue, which of course we've referenced already. But anyway, let's take some of your questions then from the live chat before we go. Oshin says, what do we think of going in for Raheem Sterling? With Neto's arrival at Chelsea, he is surplus. Arteta knows him. He's got pace. Oh, if this was 2 years ago, I'd have said, yeah. I'd have said, take a punt, take a gamble. And Raheem Sterling, when he was at his brilliant best, has always credited Mikel Arteta, hasn't he, for the way he helped him develop and sort of improve parts of his game that saw him, for example, find the back of the net more frequently. There is a good relationship there, but I just think Sterling's past his best, and I don't see there being enough left there for us to sort of warrant going and spending money on him, which we'd absolutely have to do. He's on big wages at Chelsea as well. That's another thing that we'd have to take on. So I've got to say, I'm not for this. Had you asked me 2 seasons ago, my outlook on this might have been very, very different. But at the moment, no, not for me. Big hello to Vlad, who says, where do we draw the line with Tomiyasu? Excellent defender on his day, but he's just never available consistently. I mean, yeah, we had this discussion over the course of the summer on an episode, I remember, where we were talking loads about Zinchenko potentially leaving. When we heard that Arsenal were linked with Calafiori, and we knew that Arsenal were looking to get that deal done, all the talk was around, well, what happens to Jakub Kiwior now? And I kept saying, well, actually, if we're looking at Arsenal defenders that can't stay fit and it's causing us a problem, then you probably need to look at Tomiyasu before you look at Kiwior. Now, I think for what it's worth, Tomiyasu as a defender at his best on his day is better than both Zinchenko and Kiwior defensively, right? No doubt about that. If it was a one-off cup final against the best team in the world, Manchester City, and I had to entrust the role of defending against City's best players to one of Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, or Kiwior, I'm picking Tomiyasu every single day of the week. But to never be available and to be out as frequently as he is a problem. And, we shouldn't be shying away from that conversation. It is a worry. How many more times are we going to let it pass and just say, well, he's a great player, so, we just ignore it? There comes a point where at the very highest level, you need to be ruthless. And I feel like that point with Tomiyasu is not that far away, I know we've recently improved his contract. But yeah, that doesn't mean we can't move him on if we need to. Look, I don't want to be clear. I really do like him. I think he's a great asset to the squad. The fact that he can play right, left, center, all the rest of it is great. But it is a worry, isn't it? KY Berry says, are either Jesus or Martinelli injured? Not that I'm aware of. I don't know that any of them have a problem that puts their involvement next weekend in jeopardy or in doubt. But obviously both of them went down with injuries during the game, but I don't think there was anything to worry about from what I could see. If Mikel has spoken about that post-match and I've missed that, I apologize. But as far as I'm aware, I think they're both okay. Fleabeard says, hey, Harry, where does Timber fit into the starting 11? Surely he's too good to be a rotational option, no? I would have said that Jurrien Timber would have started at left back had he been fit, because I would have said that he would be ahead of Zinchenko in the kind of pecking order. Because Timber is good on the ball. Timber can go into midfield and get involved in the way that Zinchenko does and has that defensive capability as well. But because of his fitness issues, it feels like, he's going to be a little bit short in that sense. And so we're going to have to start the season with Zinchenko. And then it's going to be very fluid and it's going to change a lot, I think, over the course of the season. With regards to Timber, though, one thing I will say is that he was out for a long time and we all were desperate to see him back in action. And we saw him play a couple of under-21s games, and then we saw him appear on the final day of the season. And everybody seems to just assume that Jurrien Timber is ready at 100% to go now for the new season. Then we had this kind of little setback, the foot problem, that I think sort of proved the stark reminder to a lot of people that actually when you come back from a problem like the one he suffered, there will be bumps in the road. I think Arsenal are going to manage Jurrien Timber really, really carefully in the opening months of the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is a rotational option from August through to maybe October. until we can build him back up. There's no need to rush him. There's no need to take a risk and a gamble. We paid a lot of money to bring him in, and I think the club will be mindful of that and manage his situation really, really carefully. Fuad says, if we sign Merino and that's it, how would you rate the window? Difficult to say because I need to factor the outgoings in. I'll tell you what we'll do is at the end of the window, we'll do a show. We'll do an episode on it. I'm just making a note of this now so that I don't forget. Rating Arsenal's transfer window. And that was a suggestion from Fuad. Look, in my estimations, we need 2 more players. If we get Mikel Merino, that's one of them, but I still think we need another attacker as well. So I couldn't give it top marks if we only ended up with Mikel Merino. But, you know, I think when you're rating Arsenal's transfer window, you got to factor in who was available, what the market looked like, as well as what you want, what you think we need, etc., etc. But it's a really good question, and we'll kind of hold fire on that, and we'll do an episode on it later down the line. Ron says, can you still see Nelson and Ramsdale being sold? If the right money's on the table, then yeah. If the right money's on the table, then there's no reason why the club would stand in the way of either of those 2 young men. But at the moment, it doesn't look like anyone's put enough money on the table for Arsenal to open formal negotiations over their potential exits. We're going to have to wait and see. I do expect there to be a bit of movement towards the end of the window. I think there were some reports going around this morning that Southampton had made contact with Aaron Ramsdale, but that, you know, he's not sure about taking such a step down in terms of where they are. I think he's worried, Ramsdale, having worked his way up, that if he takes too big a step down, that he's going to find it difficult to recover from. Maybe a loan move is what he's after. Not sure. And on Reece Nelson, we heard of a bit of interest from a couple of clubs, but from what we were reading, they seem to be put off by Arsenal's asking price. I don't know what that is, by the way, and I don't know how accurate those reports are either, but I'm just telling you what I read on those situations. Patrick Carson says, any news on Chiesa? Not that I'm aware of. Don't think that's going to happen, to be honest with you. Don't think that's something we're going to sanction between now and the end of the window. Sam says, I had a close look at Kivior today. He looks in great shape with Tomiyasu and Timber having fitness issues. Should we keep him? It's one of those, Jakub Kivior, I've said it for a while now, where if the money's right, if the offer's too good to be true, too good to turn down, then take it. But if it's not, then there's no great need to sell him. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I'm at on him. Temiola says, Harry drinking red wine. Which brand? I'm actually not. I'm drinking apple and blackcurrant squash. But what I've done to spice it up a little bit is I've put 7-Up in it instead of water. So it's squash and 7-Up. Really nice. Really refreshing on a hot day like this. Okay. What else have we got? Gunner329 says, just joined. We'll have to catch the replay. Yes, you will. You'll be able to catch that straight away. In fact, you can rewind the live video, I think. So it's nice and easy to do that if you wish. Just a quick reminder, guys, if you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. Given how many of you are watching, there's no reason why we shouldn't hit a like target. 500 likes. It really, really does help. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new as well. That helps too. Leave us a review if you're listening on the audio platforms. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode later in the day, probably around about 4 or 5 p.m. We'll drop another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, where we're going to start to preview Arsenal's 24-25 campaign. Pre-season's done now. We've seen it. We know where Arsenal are at, or we have an idea of where Arsenal are at. We're going to start looking ahead to the new campaign, which, as I say, is less than a week away. I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait. Do you know what? I was at a game yesterday, just very, very briefly. I was at West Ham, Celta Vigo for BBC London. And like, it's mad because like West Ham are obviously a Premier League team, right? And in theory, you'd want to do the game involving the Premier League team. And I'm just so jealous of my colleagues who were at EFL games. And the reason I was jealous of them, even right the way down to like League One, League Two, the reason I was jealous of them was because they were watching competitive football with an intensity, with an edge. I was watching a preseason friendly that was kind of really dull. It was 2-2, and there was a penalty shootout, but it was still dull. And as a result of that, I looked at it and I just went, yeah, I can't wait for the season to start. Like, I was excited about the new season anyway, but then going to that game yesterday and watching that and thinking, how drab and dull is this? Now I'm desperate for it. Now I'm desperate for competitive football that means something. I mean, today meant something. We won the Emirates Cup again. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. If you're listening to this on Monday, have a great day, and we'll be back with you around about Monday evening with the next episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. All the best. Goodbye.